Thank you. We will now return to Sam Owens. Should the Attorney General's office offer unofficial opinions to private parties that make inquiries about the interpretation of state law?
First of all, they ought to try offering opinions to the folks that are supposed to get them now. The fact of the matter is, if you request, if I, for instance, as a chair of a county, request an opinion from the Attorney General, I'm told I'm not worthy and that he works for the state. So what happens if you're a mayor or a chairman, you go up to your state rep or your state senator and you give them the body of the language to send to Thurber Baker, and 6 months later you get a piece of paper back that says the answer could be yes or the answer could be no. That's unacceptable. The fact of the matter is, if you're the state's lawyer and if there's a legitimate question on state law, you ought to get a timely answer, and if you need more information to give a clear answer, then pick up the phone and ask for it. If there's a very legitimate question on state law that a member of the public has, and it's of a material nature, then yes, you provide that individual an answer too. You are the state's lawyer, which includes the people of the state, not just the General Assembly's lawyer or the governor's lawyer. And I would suggest to you that the office needs to be much more consumer friendly and provide those services.
The answer to your question is yes. When you're elected, you're not elected by the governor. He's one of the people that votes, or she's one of the people that votes. And you are representative of the people. And so why should you be afraid of answering and responding to individual citizens who would like an interpretation of state law? It seems to me that the whole movement we're seeing across the country is that people want their government to be more responsive. They want them to be more accountable. They want to know that when they elect somebody, they represent them. And the Attorney General ultimately ought not to be afraid of receiving inquiries from private citizens. Why force all issues through the gatekeepers of somebody else? Why not open the Attorney General's office up so that a citizen can ask a question and get an answer? That's kind of a novel concept in government, but it seems to me we ought to embrace that and not run from it.
I agree.
Well, okay, next question, we will return to Mr. Smith. What will you do to defend Georgia's voter ID law?
This is an interesting issue, and I was involved in the policy making of voter ID. To me, it's common sense. Your vote ought to be secure, and the reason why your vote has meaning is that someone else can't, by use of fraud, harassment, or intimidation, cancel your vote through their own misdeeds. And for your vote to have meaning, there can't be widespread fraud out there that is taking away the impact of your one vote. And so it makes no sense to me that you can't go to a Walmart and cash a check without showing your ID, but you can cast a vote, which ought to be sacred in this country, without having to show who you are. And it just makes common sense. It's done in other states. It ought to be done in Georgia. There's no reason to fear people from showing who they are when they cast a vote. And if you don't believe there's voter fraud that happens right here in Georgia, you're simply wrong. Talk to the members of the State Election Commission, the board that looks at these complaints every single year, every single cycle. There are complaints. The owner of the Tinderbox in Lenox Square Mall voted for almost 10 years after he died. Now, he didn't vote, but somebody voted under his name. There is voter fraud that still happens, and if we showed an ID when we voted, we could fix that problem.
Well, I'm glad Preston's using my analogy now about Walmart. The fact of the matter is, try giving a check and not having a request to see your driver's license. And it is unbelievable that we have an Attorney General named Eric Holder who feels that we're infringing on minority rights to make sure that people who vote are who they say. That is crucial. And the fact of the matter is, we needed to be fighting this a year ago. Thurber Baker was not. We ended up needing the governor to hire Ann Lewis as a special attorney general for that case. I would suggest to you one step further. Our legislature has still not served us well because they haven't required a paper trail. Those machines, when you vote, don't give me sufficient confidence. And we should have a paper trail. There should be the requisite documentation that the numbers that come back are accurate, and we do not have that today in our state.
We went through a very tough fight putting voter ID law into place. We had liberals attacking us for that. We had folks that try to steal elections. You've seen that during the last presidential election campaign with all the shenanigans that happened with Acorn and all these community organizing groups, as they call themselves, simply trying to steal votes, harass and intimidate people, and vote fraudulently, sign up people that don't exist. hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of these applications were sent in fraudulently. And I think this is a very serious issue. It's one that we have neglected to fix. And the first step in this process is to show an ID. And one of the reasons why we've had a tough time putting this in place is that we have a liberal Democratic Justice Department under a liberal Democratic president who's using the Voting Rights Act as a weapon to keep us from securing our own votes. And other states that are not under the Voting Rights Act have been successful in doing the same thing. And that is unfair. It's treating Georgians differently than people from other states. And I think Georgia needs an attorney general that will stand up and fight over it, because our citizens deserve to have the same security in their vote as other states.
And I would just add that Indiana has a system pretty much exact to what our Secretary of State sought to do, because they're a Democratic state that was approved. We were rejected by Eric Holder for the same type of policy. The suit is important, the suit is necessary, and we need to